You know you live in an SUV-crazed world when a manufacturer like Aston Martin decides to build one, a car company that specializes in building handcrafted British luxury sports cars. They decided to introduce their first ever SUV, the DBX, back in the US in 2021. Now at the time, it was probably the best decision they could have ever made because this now accounts for over 50% of their sales globally. Now for 2023, Aston is looking to expand the DBX family with this vehicle. This is the all-new 2023 DBX 707. It essentially takes everything that we like from the standard DBX. However, it turns up the performance dial to 11 because that 4-liter AMG-sourced V8 has been massaged to produce nearly 700 horsepower. So as you can see this week, we are testing out our first ever Aston press car. And the big question I want answered, if you guys have been looking for a handcrafted, unique British luxury sports SUV, has Aston Martin succeeded in creating the perfect vehicle? Stay tuned to find out. Now, I've been doing these videos for quite some time. However, this is actually the very first time that I'm getting a chance to actually drive and show you guys a full review on an Aston Martin. So before we start talking about the beautiful exterior styling, let me go ahead and pop the hood and show you guys this magnificent hand-assembled engine. Now, about a decade ago, Aston Martin signed a partnership agreement with Mercedes-AMG where Mercedes would essentially start supplying Aston with their handcrafted AMG engines. And that, of course, started back in 2017 with the DB11. Now, under the hood of this DBX here, we essentially have the M177 version of the AMG-sourced 4-liter twin-turbocharged V8 with a 48-volt mild hybrid system. Now, in the regular DBX, it makes 542 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. However, those power figures were fine for a base model, but as you guys know, in this segment, people want more. So Aston essentially redid this engine. They put new turbos on it, they redid the internals, they did their own specific tuning, and they also replaced the transmission. So now it makes 697 horsepower. The reason why it's called 707 is because that is the horsepower in metric figures in PS, but that's not how we measure that here in the US. It also makes 53 pound-feet of torque. So again, Aston at the time claimed this was the most powerful production SUV ever. However, that claim has been dethroned by the Tesla Model X Plaid, of course. Now, it all goes out through a 9-speed automatic transmission. It's technically the AMG speed shift transmission where the torque converter was replaced by a wet multi-plate clutch system. And this vehicle comes standard with all-wheel drive with a limited slip rear differential. That's going to help put that power to the pavement. Fuel economy is rated at 15 in the city, 20 on the highway. Aston says this should get to 60 in about 3.1 seconds. That's about a second and a half faster versus the non-707 version. Fuel economy, like I said earlier, was 1520. This vehicle also has a top speed of around 193 miles an hour. So again, that's sports car, supercar territory. Surprisingly, this thing can also still tow. Aston says it'll tow just shy of 6,000 pounds. And as it sits, it weighs in at just under 5,000 pounds. So it's certainly not a lightweight vehicle. But let's go ahead and close up the hood, which as you can see, it's kind of got like a clamshell style hood where it's actually part of the fenders. But as you close the hood, let's go ahead and ooh and ah over the styling of this vehicle. Now, I've always particularly loved the way Aston Martins look, especially on their sports cars. And this was one of the first SUVs that I ever saw had styling language from a sports car that moved to an SUV body where it really just looked amazing. I mean, this car technically shares some platform componentry with the old DB9, but Aston said this is a bespoke platform. This isn't like shared with a Mercedes-AMG product in terms of the platform, only in terms of the engine and in terms of the tech within the interior. Now, my tester is painted in a racing line shade of gray called Apex Gray. You can see it's got this beautiful metallic fleck in it. It also has these functional heat extractors with actual carbon fiber. There's actually an additional $9,200 worth of additional carbon fiber all over this vehicle, and this color is also $5,000 extra. Aston actually offers a total choice of around 55 different colors. So that's the beauty about going to this exotic brand of class vehicle. You can customize it to your heart's content. You can see all DBXs come standard with their full adaptive LED headlights, which include LED daytime running lights, LED turn signals, no LED fog lights. The grille, you can see you can get it in this dark black finish, or you can also get it in a bright finish. It's about $800 extra for that. My tester, you can see the DBX 707 has a much larger grille. In fact, this is the largest grille Aston has ever put on a production vehicle. And you can see the 707 includes larger functional openings, this really attractive looking front splitter, and you can see just these functional air intakes that are going to help provide the necessary cooling that you need. Overall, I think it looks fantastic. It looks better versus the standard DBX model, and I especially love it in this Apex gray exterior color. Now, moving around the side profile, this is a big vehicle, which it needs to be. It's an Aston Martin. It has a wheelbase of around 120.5 inches long, and its overall length is around 198.5 inches long. So this is about as long as like a 3-row SUV, something like a Honda Pilot or a Kia Telluride, which you wouldn't compare to these to those vehicles. This would compete with something like the Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT Coupe, a Lamborghini Urus, a Bentley Bentayga, a Mercedes-AMG GLS, or BMW XM, and the new Ferrari SUV, and McLaren is eventually going to work on an SUV as well. But you can see the wheels. This car comes standard with 22-inch wheels. My tester, for an extra $6,000, has their 23-inch wheel. So again, these are one of the largest wheels that you can get. It's got a staggered wheel setup at a 285/35 ZR20. The backs, as you can see, are freaking huge. They're 325/30 ZR23. So again, really big tires because you need that grip to put that power down. The brakes also, carbon ceramics are standard. These are a 16.5-inch carbon ceramic rotor with a 6-pot caliper. The rears are 15.5 inches with a 4-pot caliper. You can see this car also comes standard with an air suspension with adaptive dampers. Aston said you can raise the ground clearance up to a max of 9.3 inches. You can also lower the vehicle down to around 7.5 inches. So again, this vehicle has all the necessary tech that you expect. Now, over here, you can see there are some functional openings here that allow air to pass through along the body. You can see there's genuine carbon fiber here, carbon fiber here. This is part of a $10,000 upcharge that my tester has. And then you can see here, Aston calls this their swan wing doors, where you can see there's no actual, or this is totally frameless. So you can see there's no like silver, or I'm sorry, there's no gray or silver or any kind of like rubberized material. You can see it kind of goes flush from the window down to the doors. You can see the door handles are also flush, which I love. And overall, you can see the rear styling of this vehicle just looks really aggressive. In fact, I see some Porsche in the design language, especially with the coupe-like body. But when you get to the rear, you really can tell this thing is special. I love how that kind of duckbill spoiler is built into the rear hatch. You have these full-length LED taillights, and then the Aston Martin logo back here, which again, it spells out Aston Martin to let everybody know that you've got this really fancy, elegant SUV. The roof is a massive panoramic glass roof, although it doesn't open, it has a retractable shade. And then this carbon fiber you can see is extra $10,000. It's included on this model here with that option package. The 707 in general has a more aggressive rear spoiler area. Now down here, this is where it gets a little controversial for me because I love the quad outlet dual exhaust that you get, which an active exhaust. I'll go ahead and fire it up and hear how you guys can hear how it sounds. Aston Martin specifically tuned the exhaust system to, their own liking. While it's not quite as loud as what you might hear from a Jaguar, for example, or an American V8, it definitely has a unique thunderous note to it. Now, this is the area where I felt it was a little controversial. This rear diffuser sticks out very far out, actually. You can see down here, you can also get a tow package, which my tester is lacking. But this kind of gets in the way if you're like trying to get into the cargo area, so you kind of have to keep that in mind that it's there. But opening up the power liftgate, you can see it's an SUV. It has to be practical. And Aston says you get around 23 cubic feet of storage space back here, which is actually quite usable. But as you can see, I mentioned to you guys, as you're getting in here, you have to watch because you can smash your knees up against that. But underneath this floor here, you can see it's well finished. You have a temporary spare tire where you have to inflate it. There's a lot of aluminum trim here that acts like a scuff plate. You can also raise and lower the air suspension. This leather lined shelf also will come out if you guys want, and you can also fold down that second row seat to expand the cargo to be just over 54 cubic feet, which is a little on the small side considering the size of this vehicle. But again, if you guys are coming from one of their sports cars like a DB11, this is going to be a really practical car. So obviously the exterior of the DBX is absolutely gorgeous, but you're going to be spending your time inside as well. So let's go ahead and hop inside and show you guys this interior. Before we do that, let me show you guys the key fob. Now before, again, you want to call this car a rebadged Mercedes, it is not, because as you can see, the key fob is purely Aston Martin. I've actually never seen their fob before. You can see it's heavy. It feels really well made. I love the glass that you see at the very top here with the Aston Martin logo. You have your usual lock, unlock, and open up the trunk button, and I believe there's a panic button right here or something like that that also will activate the alarm. I don't know if there's access to a phone app because this is the old Mercedes command system, but you can see as you approach the vehicle, the door handles here are completely flush. They do pull out, but they're not power actuated. If you want to lock the door, you just touch the inside of that. That locks the door. It also electrically folds the mirrors. When you want to unlock it, just push that side over there and then pull the door handle out, and that will unlock the door for you. Now, my tester has this Q titanium gray interior with the yellow accents. Now, I want to point out that just like the exterior, Aston offers like over 40 different color combinations for the interior, and for a vehicle that is hand assembled, there is just plush materials everywhere. I have to say, with this gray color, I would have definitely gone with a different interior versus the primary black theme, although they call this a quantum gray or titanium gray. It's definitely a little bit dark. You can see the door panel has real stitching with contrast silver stitching. In fact, this is like an extra $2,000 for the silver contrast stitching. The interior itself is an extra $7,600 plus additional for the leather on the dash for like another $6,000. Those carpeted floor mats are $2,000 for the gray that you get with this plush carpeting trim. There's carbon fiber there for the side sill. And you can see there's more carbon fiber along the door panels, the window controls. They feel high quality and tactile. It's an Aston Martin specific switchgear, although as we start poking around the interior, you might see a couple of Mercedes style switchgears, but you can see here, there's a little bit of storage here. And then the 14 speaker stereo that comes standard on this car actually sounds pretty good. It doesn't actually have a branding to it, but it is definitely a premium audio system that sounds great if you guys get tired of listening to the engine. The seats adjust in 16 different ways. They are heated and ventilated. You can see it's like a sport racing style bucket seat. The leather also feels really high quality. It also smells really nice in here. And then you can see you have 3-person memory. Surprisingly, there's no massaging seats available on this car. I think that should be included, especially at this price point. You can see even the seat frame is wrapped in genuine leather with contrasting stitching. So there's a reason why you're also paying this much money for a car that's this expensive and this exotic. Now, getting inside, you can see it has that typical SUV step-in height, which if you guys have owned Astons before will be weird, but this is the reason why so many people want an SUV. As I get in and shut the door does have a soft close feature, as you expect, but it doesn't have like those buttons where it opens and closes for you. But if you want to slam the door doesn't have the most solid thunk, but it is kind of like a frameless design. You can also see the windows. They do move down and then they move up as well to close and seal off the, seal you off from the outside, which again is all part of that impression of quality. Once I get in here, you can see the interior dash design doesn't look all that impressive in terms of tech. And then when you want to start the vehicle up, this is my first time getting in an Aston earlier, but I struggled to find the start stop button. I was looking down here and here for it on the steering wheel and to the left. It's actually up here right above the infotainment system along with the transmission controls. Push that button with your foot on the brake, and you can hear the engine fires up. It kind of roars to life because of that 48-volt mild hybrid system. It doesn't have a traditional starter noise. Now, what's interesting about this car is there's a secret Easter egg to where if you want to start the vehicle up in its loudest setting, which if you want to basically piss off your neighbors because it's kind of quiet, you basically have to pull and hold the left paddle here while pushing the start stop button. So I'm going to do that really quick while I'm also trying to hold this camera. And you can hear the exhaust automatically goes into a louder setting, which right now it's a little bit quiet, so I have to switch it over into the Sport Plus setting, and that's where you can hear the baffle opens up and, oh God, that noise. I'm sad about the very low 3,000 RPM rev limiter, but it just kind of reminds you that you're driving something very special. Now, looking at the rest of this cabin, you can see the dash design doesn't look all that impressive in terms of tech, but it is meticulously crafted. You can see there's real leather all over the entire portion of the dash with the same contrast silver stitching. This is a 10.25-inch display that is technically an older MBUX infotainment system. You have a 12.3-inch customizable digital display here for the instrument panel, which is slightly customizable. It's not quite as customizable as what you get in the newer Mercedes products. And then this screen here, I want to touch it and use it as a touchscreen, but it's not a touchscreen. You have to use the old command touchpad here or this little scrolly knob to interact with the screen here, which is frustratingly dated. And if you guys are an Android user, the system does not offer Android Auto compatibility, which is again annoying, but you can see my iPhone 14 Pro Max, it pairs up to it. And again, I'm still trying to use it as a touchscreen. I have to go here or push the home button here. You can see there's the Aston Martin system. So this is the command system, but it also has Aston Martin graphics in it. So it tries to make it look a little bit different. So that's something to, again, kind of remind you that this is an older design. You can see I have to use this little scrolly pad, the trackpad or the scrolly wheel to kind of navigate through the different sources in here. There's the embedded GPS, which again, it's the old Mercedes system here. Nothing super special. This is definitely the biggest letdown with this car. The transmission selector, like I said, is up here, which I think is not a great location. I kind of wish that Mercedes would have just given them their transmission selector with a little stock. You can see that turn signal and wiper stock is the same one that you get out of old Mercedes products. The 707 model also includes these massive carbon fiber paddles, the shift paddles for the 9-speed transmission. You can see they're also mounted to the column, which is great. The steering wheel itself looks good. It's got a 3-spoke design. I'm surprised the rim doesn't feel as fat as I would like it to, surprisingly. You have your controls here for the adaptive cruise. You can adjust that. Your volume controls. The horn sounds okay. It's pretty nondescript, but you have to push really hard on that to get it to work. You can see there's carbon fiber here, but no heads-up display. The steering wheel itself, you can see that control is a Mercedes control there. It's a power tilt telescoping with a heated wheel. If you twist that, it'll turn the heated wheel on and off. But overall, I can get a pretty comfortable driving position when I get in this vehicle. And then you can see here some more piano black plastic trim. And then you have some genuine carbon fiber along here. This is, again, a copy of Mercedes. You have your usual buttons here for the parking assist, your backup camera. You can see, push that button. It gives you sonar guidance and whatnot. You can also show different views for the camera angles. This has a full 360 camera. There's a curb view to keep you from curbing your wheels, which again, the resolution is fine. And I like how it takes up mostly the entire part of the screen. You can see you've got your loud exhaust button here. That's for your lane keep assist, adaptive dampers. And then your drive mode settings here, you can see there's a terrain, individual, GT, Sport, and Sport Plus. So the terrain is for off-roading. It'll raise the vehicle up by almost 2 inches to give you more ground clearance. And then there's GT, which is normal, Sport, and then Sport Plus. So we'll show you the different drive modes later on when we get into the driving scene. You can see this is the command wheel here, which is a touchpad. It has some nice leather there, which is nice. You have a wireless phone charging pad down here, which Aston Martin added in 2022, so last year. But it's kind of out of the way. There's a little bit of storage underneath here. This center console here, you can see slides forward to cover up the cup holders, but you can also slide it back. And you can also kind of adjust the cup holders as well to give you different fitment, although they seem really small and kind of an afterthought. Open this up, you can see the center console has 2 USB-A charging ports. The second one there on the right is for your smartphone, for an Apple phone. But again, the fact that it uses a USB-A shows how old it is. The seats, you can see, I mentioned earlier, look fantastic. They're actually very comfortable and supportive. They adjust in 16 different ways, but they lack a massage feature. The heated and cooled function, however, works extremely well. You can see the heated and cooled seats are down here. There are 3 levels, and I like how it's actually a button, although it's a touch-sensitive button. And then you can see here your climate functions are down there. So I like how there's a bunch of knobs and buttons still. The glove compartment, you can see, push that little button, it opens up. It's a bin style, it's stamped, and it's lined with felt. The rear view mirror, you can see it's a frameless design. This is all for the Aston Martin driver assistance tech, which is a version of Mercedes. No digital camera rear view mirror, but it does have a auto dimming function. You have LED map lighting, and then you can see here this glass roof is huge. It goes all the way to the back. So it lets in a lot of light, but sadly it doesn't open to vent air. But overall, you can see the cabin is roomy, it's spacious, it's well made, and really it's only let down by old infotainment technology, which we should be seeing updated within the next year or so. Now hopping into the back seat of the DBX 707. Now this is their first SUV, but Aston seems to understand what people in this segment really want, and that's rear seat space. Because as you can see, although the door doesn't open up in the widest manner, it does offer a little over 40 inches of legroom back here. 40 inches is a lot more than what I was expecting. You can see this is where I'd have the seat to drive. You can have more carbon fiber here on the back, and you have the same beautiful leather and contrast two-tone look on the rear seats. These seats also fold down. If you push this button here, you can see they kind of actuate, fold down, which again kind of gives you almost a completely flat load floor, although it is slightly slanted. But overall, you can see the seats don't recline, and they don't have like a power function as well where they can slide forward and back. But once I get back here, you can see these seats, they do have really good thigh support, which as I get in and shut the door, you can see the door panel has the same beautiful leather and high quality materials and carbon fiber and nice craftsmanship. You can see there are two storage cubbies there in each of the seat backs. You have rear seat air vents here, and you have your own set of climate control. So there's triple zone climate control. Some competitors offer 4. And then you can see Aston also gives you heated and ventilated second row seats, which is, all of this is standard. You don't have to pay extra for all this climate function, which is typically the case for most competitors. You have 2 USB-A charging ports here. You can also lock and unlock the door from here. And then you can see there is a big center console or center hump here for the drive shaft, and the body is wide enough where you could fit 3 across, but it would start to get a little bit tight. You can see the armrest here folds down and gives you 2 cup holders, but not any more additional storage here. And then when I look here, you can see headroom space is actually quite good, but I'm only 5'7", so maybe for those of you who are over 6 feet, this could be a little bit less considering the roof. But overall, the second row is definitely spacious. This has more space versus the Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT Coupe that I was in late last year. So here we are, the day that I have been waiting for. I have waited so long to finally get behind the wheel of an Aston Martin. I mean, in my line of work, I've driven so many different brands, but for some reason, Aston Martin has just always eluded me. And for my first time ever, we are in the DBX 707, which is their most powerful production SUV ever. It's also the brand's first ever SUV that came out 2 years ago. And I have to say, first impressions in the DBX are quite good. This is a big SUV that's heavy, but it doesn't always feel super heavy. I mean, it doesn't feel like 5,000 pounds, which we'll talk about later on. Now, being that this model has almost 700 horsepower, 697, it should sprint to 60 in about 3 seconds, according to Aston Martin. So let's go ahead and see what we can get in our actual testing. Ooh, God! Holy shit! Tunnel vision, instant tunnel vision. Now, I just got 3.12 seconds without even trying, and I have to say, this thing literally pushes you so hard back into the seat. It reminds me of the Cayenne Turbo GT Coupe that I tested in LA. And that car, I believe, did it in under 3 seconds. I can't remember off the top of my head, but ooh, the feeling that you get when this thing pushes you when you first launch the vehicle. It has, as you guys heard, launch control. It'll rev it up to around 4,000 RPM and then dump that wet clutch. And it's just with the all-wheel drive, the limited slip diff, there is no wheel spin whatsoever. And we've got these really fat 23-inch tall tires, so it just puts that power down really well. But you know what? I have to try it again here. Hold the brake. Ooh, the front basically lifts up. Holy 3.14 there, so that was with it more going uphill versus back there was a little more level. So I'm gonna try it one more time up ahead here because I think I can get it into the low 3s, but wow, I mean, the fact that we live in a world where you have these performance SUVs that can give you the kind of thrill that you would expect out of a hypercar, supercar from 5-10 years ago is just insane. And for Aston Martin's first attempt at an SUV, this is a really impressive. I mean, the chassis of this thing, I mean, I love doing that, But the steering of the car has been retuned. The suspension, the adaptive dampers, and the air suspension has also been retuned. This is Sport Plus right now within its firmest, most aggressive setting. And the ride quality is still surprisingly good. I'm shocked at how good the ride is. I mean, it's also an air suspension with adaptive dampers, which is going to help improve that ride quality. You don't really feel the 5,000 pounds of fat as you hustle through. Now, granted, I do believe the Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT Coupe is more athletic. I also haven't had a chance to drive the Lamborghini Urus, which I technically drove in the Cayenne Turbo GT Coupe. There's also the Bentley Bentayga, which I haven't driven. I have driven like a BMW X6M competition, which would compete with this, although it's much less expensive. And then there's also the new BMW XM, which I also haven't had a chance to drive yet. And then AMG has their plethora of high-performance SUVs, but this also has an AMG engine. Oh, listen to the exhaust. They retuned the exhaust to be louder in this car, and it's not quite, you know, as loud as what you hear in like a Jag or an American V8, but it also has that British charm, but it also has like that hint of Germanness in the background. Aston obviously tuned the engine of this thing and the exhaust to be a little bit different, and you notice that difference. Oof, God, jeez. All right. 3.06 seconds there, and that's with it on level ground, so I'll take that number, basically 3 seconds. Oh my God, this car is absolutely bonkers. Just spine tingling, puts a huge smile on my face. It's crazy that an SUV can be this fast. It's just absolutely nuts. And the cool thing is with that limited slip diff, this thing will let the back step out. Oh, listen to that engine. It just revs all the way to 7,000 RPM. You've got these carbon fiber paddles, which are mounted to the column, which I love. And then when I pull the paddle here, it should rev match. There we go. It could be louder. I wish there were a little bit more crackles and pops from the exhaust. There's a little bit. I want a little bit more. Wow, this thing makes me feel like a kid. This is just absolutely ridiculous, and I'm here for it. Oh, that engine. Oh, the engine and the chassis, the steering, the seats, also they hold you in place nicely. You can see out of the vehicle really well, although the view out of the rear is not great. I do kind of wish that Aston would offer a digital camera review mirror. I think it would do well to have that feature because of the small rear window. But everything else out of the front sides is good. The tech in this car is really the biggest letdown. It has some of the older tech from Mercedes-Benz where it's borrowing that, specifically the infotainment system, which is just garbage. It's really one of the worst that I've used. The fact that it's not a touchscreen also is super annoying. Let me go ahead and switch the drive mode here to, because I was in Sport Plus the whole time, let's go ahead and switch it to GT mode. Now in this mode, you can hear it gets a lot quieter. The ride also gets softer, the steering gets a lot lighter, and it settles down and it reminds you that this is a $300,000 luxury SUV, so it damn well better have a nice ride quality. And it definitely does. The steering is still very quick, precise. The chassis just changes directions. The car changes directions so fast whenever I turn the wheel, it's insane. And it quiets down in here to where, you know, at higher speeds, I noticed that it's really quiet. It feels also relatively solidly built. I didn't hear too much in terms of squeaks and rattles. I mean, this car is hand assembled in England, and it has that feel, that specialness that I love about these kind of vehicles. I mean, the last time I felt something like this, I was in a Rolls Royce, which the Rolls felt even more solid, but this is still really good. In this mode here, when I put my foot down, you really put your foot down hard, you can hear the exhaust has an active valve that'll open. It takes a little bit of a second for the 9-speed to respond, but this is, remember, an AMG transmission, so they replaced the torque converter with a wet clutch. But then, like, once it settles back down, it's quiet, it's comfortable. And in my week's worth of testing, in case you care about fuel economy, I averaged around 16 mpg, which, you know what, is not bad. On the highway, I was able to get 20, which is not bad. This was showing around 350 miles on a full tank. It has about a 23-gallon gas tank. You better put premium in this thing. But I mean, it's surprisingly easy and docile to live with. So bravo on Aston for, you know, giving us such a well-rounded car. I mean, I expected them to do that considering the price of this vehicle. But in all honesty, I mean, for the price, you could buy a lot. I mean, yes, you could also get a Lamborghini Urus. You could also get a G-Wagon. You can get an AMG Mercedes, BMW XM, Bentley Bentayga. There's the new Ferrari SUV as well that's going to come out. McLaren is probably going to work on an SUV as well. There's all these super exotic car companies that are coming out with their own versions of SUVs, including obviously Aston Martin. But for me, I come back to the Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT because even though the Porsche doesn't have the same, you know, look at me design, this thing just got attention everywhere I took it. Everybody was wondering what the hell it was. And then when they thought saw it was an Aston, they were like, oh my God, I didn't know Aston makes an SUV. I mean, if you want something that's different, that stands out, that's also easy to live with, that's fast as hell, that's also practical, it's just the infotainment system might be a deal breaker for me. So I really hope Aston can eventually pull the newest Mercedes command system into this with their MBUX. Basically get rid of the command and put MBUX. That'll make this vehicle a lot better. And it it makes me wish I made more money so I could afford something like this, because this is just absolutely bonkers. So after spending the last couple of days with the all-new 2023 Aston Martin DBX 707, this is a vehicle that I didn't expect I would get a chance to drive this year, but I'm really grateful that I did, because essentially this car lives up to the expectation that I had as a kid for the Aston Martin brand. I mean, yes, it's an SUV. It doesn't follow the, soul of Aston Martin with them being a sports car manufacturer, but the company successfully transferred a lot of the design cues from their sports car onto this vehicle that seriously attracts a lot of attention everywhere it goes. As you guys saw from the performance, 0 to 60 in a smidge over 3 seconds makes this one of the quickest accelerating SUVs that you can buy. The handling also surprised me as well with its quick, sharp steering that provides decent feedback, and a suspension that has the ability to go from soft to hard, to also kind of give you that nice ride quality and handling balance that you expect when you get a vehicle like this. The interior also has really good build quality, as I expected as well. It's got lots of soft leather. It's got plenty of space. What really is the biggest letdown is the infotainment system, and it could be a deal breaker for me because I hate how this car uses the old Mercedes command system, which again, literally feels like it is 10 years old. So I've heard Aston Martin is working on a new system. It's probably going to be the newer MBUX system that we get in the newer Mercedes models, which again should become a touchscreen, should become a larger screen, should be much better overall. But until then, it definitely does give me pause. Now, if you guys aren't infotainment systems aren't your number one thing, this is definitely an exotic sports SUV that should be at the top of your list, which if you can afford a vehicle like this, it's going to cost you a pretty penny, because it's going to compete with cars like the Porsche Cayenne, the Lamborghini Urus, the upcoming Ferrari SUV, the Bentley Bentayga, the Mercedes-AMG lineup of SUVs like the GLE and the GLS. And this car starts at around $192,000 for the base DBX. If you guys want the 707, which Aston actually says they expect around 70% of buyers looking at this to go for the DBX 707, which doesn't surprise me if you can afford a vehicle like this. It's going to cost you an extra $50,000 to get that model at least. So this starts at around $236,000. My tester has around $50,000 to $60,000 worth of options, which is just insane. I mean, they're literally not even performance options. They're options like the brake calipers are just $1,500 extra, the carbon fiber on the outside, which is almost $10,000 extra, the wheels that are $6,000 extra, the $5,000 paint, the extra like $5,000 for the interior. It's just an endless amount of customization, which is what you expect in a vehicle like this. But the grand total for this car here comes to just shy of $293,000. $293,000 is insane. This makes this car about $80,000 more expensive than the Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT Coupe that I tested in LA late last year, which I'm questioning, is the car worth it? The two cars have pretty similar speed, acceleration, similar handling. There's definitely more of an exotic factor with this. This car just gets a lot more attention everywhere. I'm just not entirely sure it's worth the extra money, especially when you have to deal with that infotainment system, which to me could be a deal breaker, but that's kind of a smaller glitch there. If you guys are okay with that and you want literally the Aston Martin of SUVs in its purest form with the most performance, this model here should definitely make it to the very top of your list. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the 2023 Aston Martin DBX 707. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.